who could have thought that the best performer, at least one of the best performers in the stock markets this year would have been the fossil fuel companies, or Coal India for that matter, which is supposed to be a dying business. And so the long and short of this story, at least the learning for me, has been the markets are still very, very focused on economic rewards. And the market only rewards profit maximizing behavior. And wherever, whoever can exploit that to get that extra bit and maximize their profits, they are going to do it. The market is not going to offer us any solutions. And therefore, a lot of the solutions has to come from the ecosystem. We have to nudge players. Institutionally, we have to, tilt this equation in favor of a fair play. With that, I'll just stop and hand over to Arun to articulate the problem and the key findings from the study.
Thank you, Mahalakshmi ji. And good afternoon, everyone. As Mahalakshmi said, that post-lunch session is very difficult. In fact, that's true. But I'll try to keep everyone awake with showing lots of data. And data is new oil. I hope that will bring down some price. Let's see how much we want to add. The 6% of GVA are basically logged in what we call the delayed payment. And unfortunate that 80% of that amount belongs to the micro and small companies. And more unfortunate that 65% of the total sales values for the micro companies are logged in the delayed payment.
3 or 4 categories of things. This is not something which has a single silver bullet solution. That is, I think, very, very clear. When we speak to partners, when we speak to stakeholders, when we speak to customers, there has to be a range of things which need to be done. And I would put them in 3 or 4 buckets. The first is, of course, in the, the policy and regulatory bucket. I think already mentioned that the government is seized of the problem, trying to do a number of things, but perhaps more is needed. Could the government drive this as an important policy priority? We heard the finance minister during COVID speaking about the fact that public sector undertakings must immediately pay the dues. And you saw the numbers of public sector undertakings on one of the slides from Arun there. So that kind of stuff which has to be done. We need to include data on this on a regular basis in things like the government's economic survey, etc., and the government push us. So that's one type of solutions. The second is, market innovations, and your organization is leading the charge, I think, in some sense. I think TREADS has been a big hope for the country. Unfortunately, it hasn't taken off in the way it should have. There are issues around adoption of TREADS, which again need to be taken care of. The Ministry of MSME has something called the Samadhan portal, which is to help overcome disputes between MSMEs and buyers on payment-related issues. Unfortunately, the take-up of that has not been much. So we need to think of other online dispute resolution mechanisms. I think there are some partners in this conference who are trying to take online dispute resolution as a way of low-cost, less friction resolution of issues which leads to the delayed payment problem. Pre-solve is one example, which I think is also here. So there's a whole bunch of things we need to do on market innovation. And then lastly, I think, moral suasion is very important, and I'd love to hear your views on the matter. Can we create a movement around this problem? Can we celebrate the guys who actually do a good job?
Again, many different players who are attacking that problem. TREADS is another really important piece there. In fact, we have recently been approved to also operate a TREADS license by the Reserve Bank. So that's a really important step that the government is taking.
The first thing I want to talk about, by the way, which is empathy for our MSMEs that we work with within Hero. But I was saying that I think the intent from a buyer, as a buyer, I can tell you, is to pay my partners absolutely on time. And the reason is my reputation, my brand's reputation. I want the most innovative, the best partners to come work with us.
Through the act or through other means, as a responsible organization, I would see that we have to also realize that there is no point trying to tighten the screw too much. If we do that, we might end up losing the buyer itself, because buyers would start bypassing the MSMEs and they would start getting the supplies through the intermediaries.
And as per a very conservative estimate also at this moment, we have a credit gap only for MSME, which is more than 20 trillion. So you can see the, and MSME, the name itself, it is not the micro small by any standard when you talk about their contribution towards GDP and more importantly the employment part.